Activision Blizzard executives have a dreadful reputation, and for good reason. They shower themselves with millions and millions of dollars while their employees suffer from layoffs or being underpaid. This is no secret. Back in January 2019, it was reported that Dennis Durkin, a new CFO who was given the role after the former CFO was poached, received $15 million in bonus just because he signed on for the job. And then later that year, on February 2019, it was reported that Activision Blizzard cut nearly 800 jobs amidst record results in 2018. Financially, they did better than ever, and yet they felt that they were justified in ending the jobs of nearly 800 people. Even shareholders were upset at how much money Bobby Kotick was making, as reported by Games Industry on June 4th, 2020, with a headline that reads, Activision Blizzard shareholders upset over CEO Bobby Kotick's compensation. One investment group in particular noted that Activision Blizzard was engaging in irresponsible and unethical corporate behavior and excessive executive pay. They noted how Kotick's proposed compensation has not been reduced accordingly, despite the fact that he did not meet certain performance targets. They noted how Kotick's payment is consistently larger than the total pay of CEO peers at similar companies, and this is all especially disconcerting amidst the decision to lay off 800 staff in early 2019 despite a record year. And here's a quote from a filing that reads, Kotick's apparent failure to achieve more than half of the targeted performance strongly suggests that Activision Blizzard's skewed approach to human capital management, lavishing multi-million-dollar rewards on the CEO as employees face layoffs, needs to be addressed before it manifests in deeper operational problems. So with all that in mind, let's talk about today's story, which comes from an investigative report published by Jason Schreier on August 3rd, 2020. The headline reads, Blizzard workers share salaries in revolt over wage disparities. Now, before we begin, I do want to note that I spoke to a Blizzard employee whose identity will obviously be kept anonymous. This is someone who I trust, someone who very clearly wants to see positive change at the company, and I'm going to relay information conveyed to me and sprinkle those kind of throughout the video as it's relevant. With that out of the way, here's the opening bid for Jason's article. Employees at Blizzard Entertainment, a division of Activision Blizzard, Inc., began circulating a spreadsheet on Friday to anonymously share salaries and recent pay increases, the latest example of rising tension in the video game industry over wage disparities and executive compensation. Now, this spreadsheet has actually leaked and made its way to the public, and this aspect is something that Blizzard employees are not happy about. According to my Blizzard source, quote, speaking about the spreadsheet leak, a majority of people are very upset about that. It's an extreme breach of trust to have people put down very personal details about their salaries only to have that blasted out to the internet. Now, the spreadsheet is anonymous, but positions are listed alongside salaries and the percentage of pay raise they got. And this is information they didn't want to make public. This was more of a means to protest internally so that it could draw the attention of higher-ups who could do something about the awful salaries and the disparity in wages. So that's an important bit of context to add. It was also intimated to me that the tone of the conversation within Blizzard and among Blizzard employees is that they're trying to remain as constructive as possible. They're not necessarily revolting with pitchforks per se, but they do have a Slack channel where a lot of these employees are discussing these issues. So this is what my Blizzard source relayed. The overall sentiment of the Slack channel is in good faith and is really trying to stay constructive and focused on the issues people are facing. There is friendly debate and discussions being threaded out for deeper dives, though not without some anger. While it is justified, it's not welcome and people are being called out on it. There is an internal document filled with requests to management. My source also added that people aren't mass quitting and nobody's striking. Quality assurance and customer service want their needs to be noticed and they want to get a response other than "We hear you," which ironically is the title of a section in a weekly newsletter they put out. The source then adds, I would say this is more of getting executives' attention since those who need it aren't getting it. Overall, the sentiment is very constructive, though the nerves were definitely hit due to the leak. It started as a thread in #general. Now it has its own 800 plus people Slack channel, which has been active at all hours. Even those working in Europe have chimed in. Even senior level engineers and designers want equality for customer service and quality assurance. So without question, there is some kind of internal protest going on within the company, but there aren't pitchforks being raised, strikes, and, sort of more anger and violent driven acts. They're trying to keep conversation constructive, but people certainly are feeling that salaries and wages are being poorly handled and that certain departments are being treated very unfairly. All right, so going back to the article, here's additional context about this whole situation. In 2019, after an internal survey revealed that more than half of Blizzard workers were unhappy with their compensation, the company told staff it would perform a study to ensure fair pay, according to people familiar with the situation. Blizzard implemented the results of that study last month, which led to an outcry on the company's internal Slack messaging boards. So many employees and departments were not pleased about how Blizzard was paying them. So Blizzard conducted a study and said, okay, we looked at the results, we're actually going to do something to fix it, except what they implemented was not satisfactory. It reads right here, one employee then created a spreadsheet and encouraged staff to share their compensation information. The anonymous document reviewed by Bloomberg News contains dozens of purported Blizzard salaries and pay bumps. Most of the raises are below 10%. Significantly less than Blizzard employees said they expected following the study. Now, having taken a look at the spreadsheet to corroborate this, I can confirm that this is in fact true. Jason reached out to Activision Blizzard, and a spokeswoman, Jessica Taylor, responded as follows. Our goal has always been to ensure we compensate our employees fairly and competitively. Okay, give me a second to pull up my soundboard here. Moving on. We are constantly reviewing compensation philosophies to better recognize the talent of our highest performers and keep us competitive in the industry, all with the aim of rewarding and investing more in top employees. I'm not against the idea of compensating people who perform better more. The issue with Activision Blizzard, though, is that the floor when it comes to how certain departments are paid is far too low. They need to raise the entire floor and have everyone be compensated on a base level fairly. This goes doubly true for departments like QA and customer service, and my Blizzard source spoke to that effect, stating the following. This discussion is sparking because after this year's merit raises, many people have been given a percentage raise that is less than the percentage change in the cost of living in Irvine, effectively not giving them even a pay bump for cost of living. I'm going to base some of these statements on the already public spreadsheet to protect the privacy of other employees who have posted other very relevant, very heartbreaking stories in an internal Slack channel that now has over 800 people in it. 1. There are employees in customer service, QA, testing, and other extremely essential teams that are just not being paid a livable wage. If you look at the sheet, some are reporting less than $50,000 a year, not remote, in Irvine. That's a huge problem. Nobody should have to live paycheck to paycheck being employed by one of the biggest game developers in the world. I could not agree more. 2. HR response to questions about pay transparency. HR hasn't said a dang thing to us since this all started on Thursday or Friday of last week. Everything before that has been, we hear you, and we're working on it, without any action. It's not surprising that people are getting fed up. HR doesn't share pay bands or pay band penetration, outright denying employees when asked. As for what pay band and pay band penetration are, the way my source explained it is that pay band is basically the range of salary that you can earn in a given position, and the pay band penetration is how much of that range you have accrued. So say there's a job that's a software engineer that would pay between $100,000 and $125,000 a year. And if you are being paid $112,500 a year, you would be at 50% penetration of that pay band. And it would seem as though HR and upper management are not sharing this information with their employees, which is very frustrating for them. I also find it a bit hypocritical for Activision to talk about performance-based salaries when you consider that Bobby Kotick still gets the same salary even when he doesn't meet performance targets, so executives obviously get special treatment. That's another thing that permeates companies in general, the lack of accountability on the part of executives. When they fail in their leadership, Instead of them taking a pay cut because they failed to lead, they find a way to blame somebody else below them and cut their pay or not give them the bonus. Now, according to this Bloomberg article, CEO Bobby Kotick, his compensation in 2019 was worth $40 million at the end of that year. $40 million. Oh, and it gets worse. Right here it reads that the package has grown since then as the company's stock has soared. And it wasn't just Bloomberg who highlighted this. The employees spreading the anonymous spreadsheet of all the salaries did list the CEO's annual salary, bonus, and stock award to really drive the point that there's a ridiculous disparity and that a lot of employees at the company really are paid unfairly. The article then talks about internal messages that were reviewed that talked about employees' struggles because of their low pay. It reads right here that Blizzard employees said they were struggling to make ends meet while watching Activision Blizzard revenue grow year after year. Some producers and engineers at Blizzard can make well over $100,000 a year, but others, such as video game testers and customer service representatives, are often paid minimum wage or close to it. A rising tide is supposed to lift all boats, but that's not the case in these kinds of corporate structures. A rising tide leaves everyone else to drown, while the executives and some of the high-tier employees get to rise with that tide and make more money. Everyone else are just expendable. And I want to note that customer service representatives and video game testers, they're important parts of any game development cycle and are treated far better in other industries. So this is something that Jason Schreier highlighted in this series of tweets. He said, "One of the saddest things I hear on pretty much a weekly basis is, yes, I left the video game industry and now I'm paid better, have more stability, and I'm happier and more satisfied with my life." When somebody asked, does this only apply to engineers? Jason Schreier responded, nope, I hear it most often from QA testers who are horribly mistreated in game development and actually valued at a lot of other companies. All sorts of software companies need testers, and while game companies usually pay minimum wage, software companies might offer double or triple that. It is no wonder that so many people are so much happier in other software-related industries outside of video games. The article then references how last year hundreds of jobs were eliminated right after the new CFO got a $15 million sign-on bonus, and despite that year being a record year for Activision. And as a result of that, a lot of staff had to take over a lot of the work from people who were laid off. And according to Bloomberg, that extra work did not come with more pay, according to the people familiar with the company who asked not to be identified discussing sensitive private information. And then here's a story from one veteran Blizzard employee. He told Bloomberg that they received a raise of less than 50 cents an hour after that internal study and review. They are making less now than they did almost a decade ago because they're working fewer overtime hours than they did back then. Decade at the company, and 50 cents an hour is apparently all Blizzard could muster, while executives at Activision and Blizzard rake in millions. And the fact that this individual is making less now than they did almost a decade ago, years of service at this company, and he's making less money because he's been given fewer overtime hours than back then and other circumstances, and the fact that salary just hasn't been increased at an appropriate level. I mean, there's just a complete and utter disregard for the livelihoods of people who have put so much of their time and hard work into this company. And here's the real kicker. Several former Blizzard employees said they only received significant pay increases after leaving for other companies, such as nearby rival Riot Games Inc. in Los Angeles. And in this series of tweets, Jason Schreier noted that others have left for Amazon Game Studios and other tech companies for huge pay raises. Furthermore, my Blizzard source relayed that the individual who started the spreadsheet compiling all of the salaries and wages did something similar. So here's what my source had to say. The spreadsheet itself started after an employee asked in #general about the data that went into his year's raises after receiving a very poor raise. The employee is actually an ex-employee, as he created the form and spreadsheet the same day as he said goodbye to Blizzard, leaving for another company for effectively double pay. And this is another game development company that the individual left for. And I'm not going to say which, because I don't want to compromise their identity or anything, but you get the idea. So while unfair treatment of employees and workers being underpaid is an issue that is endemic to the games industry as a whole, Activision Blizzard, and in this case Blizzard in particular, is especially terrible on this front. And it's not just internally where people are speaking out, spreading and comparing salaries as a means to revolt. We've got people on Twitter who have come out and confirmed that these stories are true. So here's Jason Baker, who said, "I took a pay cut to join Blizzard. I doubled my salary the year after they let me go." Here's Greg Black, who tweeted, "Glad to see this. My biggest gripe while at Blizzard was the terrible comp. It was particularly bad for people just starting out, but even at my level, I had to take a significant pay cut to work there." Anybody who tells you that Activision Blizzard can't afford to pay their employees more are full of shit. For the record, as I was making this video, it was reported that, quote, Activision posts huge record results for Q2 2020 financials. The company saw record engagement for all their major franchises, in no small part due to the pandemic. But yeah, suffice to say that financially speaking, they are very well off still. They keep topping themselves year after year. They have some lulls, but ultimately they rake in so much money. And when they can still afford to pay Bobby Kotick $40 million and counting, with that number rising, you're never going to justify to me the way they treat their employees and the fact that certain departments are so woefully underpaid. Here's one more set of horror stories regarding struggling Blizzard employees, as reported by Jason Schreier via Bloomberg. In 2018 messages on internal Blizzard communication channels reviewed by Bloomberg News, employees talked about money-saving measures they have taken to remain with the company. One employee wrote that they had to skip meals to pay rent and that they used the company's free coffee as an appetite suppressant. Another said they would only eat oatmeal and bail on team lunches because they couldn't afford to buy food at the company cafeteria. A third said they and their partners stopped talking about having kids because they knew they wouldn't be able to afford it. That contrasted with pictures they saw of more senior Blizzard employees enjoying vacations to Disneyland with their families. When I spoke to my Blizzard source about some of these stories, particularly the one about people who can barely get by and who can barely afford food, the source confirmed that this is indeed true. When you're working at a company as prominent as frickin' Blizzard and you can't afford to buy basic necessities like food, yeah, there's something very wrong with the salary you're receiving, and there's something very wrong about this corporate structure. And it baffles me that they actually have employees pay for their meals in their cafeteria. I recently took a tour of another development company a few months ago, and their cafeteria, not only was it fully stocked with a wide variety of food, but it was free for all developers, for all employees, and it was free food for me as well as a visitor. I just had to line up and could pick up a meal real quick. The fact that employees at Activision Blizzard, one of the top grossing video game companies, have to pay for their food within the company, that legit shocks me. All compounded by the fact that their employees who are paid so low, who are struggling so much to maintain their livelihood, that they can barely afford food. Former Blizzard employee Jason Baker also noted that the cafeteria at Blizzard is really cheap compared to most places in Los Angeles. Skipping lunch means you're really hurting. So if your salary is so low that you can't even afford to buy food at the cheaper cafeteria at Blizzard, the cheaper than usual cafeteria, then yeah, the salary situation here is pretty freaking awful. I am glad to see that employees are finally making some kind of stand. I hope that as this story spreads, conditions for underpaid employees improve. Or at the very least, I hope, they manage to find employment somewhere where their work will feel respected, where their time and efforts will be properly compensated, because this is just not right. It is utterly disgusting to see executives like Bobby Kotick claim that they deserve $40 million a year when they can't even keep their employees fed. So that's one man's take on everything conveyed in this Jason Schreier investigative report. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.